Welcome to our second lecture relating to apostrophes. Let's just do a brief summary of what we learned last time. Again, this is a presentation about apostrophes. There are 3 times primarily that we use apostrophes in written English. And the one we're going to focus on today is going to be talking about the topic of possession or ownership, or when a noun has a relationship with a noun, and we characterize that by using the genitive case. We also discussed how in English, nouns do not usually change form based upon their function within a sentence. The one exception to that rule is our genitive or possessive case, where we add either an apostrophe s to a singular noun, or we might add an apostrophe to a plural noun. There's no difference in the pronunciation between the plural forms, but there is a difference for the singular forms. And for nouns, at least, that's the only difference that we see in terms of the case. We talked also about what possession means. It means something broader than we ordinarily refer to when we talk about possession. It's one of the reasons I kind of prefer to use genitive case, because when we say, well, is that possessive or not, it suggests that we're saying, does it possess or does it own, when in fact the concept is a lot broader than that term. Now we're going to talk about the second way that we in English can talk about possession. We've talked about using the genitive case, and that's probably the more common way of doing it, but there's another way that is also very common to use. And I'm going to call this the of blank construction. When we add of, and then in this blank space we add the noun that possesses, we have the equivalent of using the genitive case. Here's an example. Mary's eyes are brown. When we use Mary's, we're using the genitive case, so we're going to add to the end of Mary apostrophe s, and of course she possesses or she owns her eyes, so the Mary's in possessive case because of her relationship to eyes. But we can also say it this way: the eyes of Mary are brown. This phrase of Mary performs the same function that the word Mary's above performs. Now, the of blank construction, this construction kind of sounds a little wordy, a little formal, a little awkward sometimes to our ears. But that's it's grammatically correct, even if it sounds a little awkward. Just to be clear about the grammar that's going on here, of is a preposition, and Mary becomes the object of the preposition. So this is going to be not in the genitive case, it's going to be in the accusative case because it's the object of a preposition. And of course, when we have accusative case in English, we don't change the form. It's the same form that we use in the nominative and the genitive case. So that's why we say the eyes of Mary, Mary without any suffix to the word. Let's look at this example, because this is something that many times people inadvertently stumble into. And they might say, the eyes of Mary's are brown. What has happened here is that the writer has combined the genitive case up here with this of blank construction. They've kind of made it double possessive. But we know that of is a preposition, so the object of the preposition can't be in the genitive case. This is incorrect. So we can either use this construction or this construction, but we can't conflate the two. It's going to be wrong. So watch out for this. Hopefully, if this is something that you're sometimes confused about doing, you'll stop for a second and think, wait a second. If I'm going to put a noun in genitive case, it has to be followed, usually immediately, but sometimes with a few words in between, with the noun that it is possessing. So for example, we could say, Mary's brown eyes are big. And so the word brown is between Mary's, which is in genitive case, and the noun that it possesses, the eyes. But the word eyes always is going to have to be after the genitive case Mary's. When we use the of blank construction, it's going to occur after the noun. So the location of the word that possesses is going to tell us whether we're looking at genitive case or non-genitive case. Let's go forward. Here we're going to go through some examples about how we can use those two techniques. Let's, for a second, say that we want to describe in a sentence the fact that I own a dog, a pug. We might say, the dog of me is a pug. This is grammatically correct, even though it sounds very, very strange, because me is the object of the preposition of, and that's correct. Me is the form for the object of the preposition. But when we want to put the idea of I into the genitive or possessive case, we use my. Again, you can see the position is the same as we had with Mary's. It comes before the noun. But when we have the of blank construction, it comes after the noun. Of course, none of us would ever say the dog of my is a pug. That doesn't sound right to us at all. So that's not a danger that we have. Let's look at another sentence to see how this works. Let's say that we are proofreading someone's work and we see this sentence written. Bob likes Mary's dress. We don't know right now whether we need to add an apostrophe here or not. In other words, we don't know whether Mary's is in the genitive case or not, whether it should be in the genitive case or not. So the question is, does Bob mean from this sentence, does the writer mean Bob likes the dress of Mary? Because if this is what he means, if he means the of blank construction, this is the same thing as that, right? We've already decided those are equivalent meaning. Different grammatical structures, but equivalent meaning. So if the writer means this, he means when the word Mary occurs before the noun that Mary possesses, we're going to need to have an apostrophe S. Let's assume that's what it means, because it seems to be what it means. So if the answer is yes, and let's say we agree, yes, what the writer meant was Bob likes the dress of Mary, then we have to add the apostrophe S right here, right in front of Mary, because after all, we know that there's only one Mary in the story because there's only one dress. Let's look at some additional cases. We've already discussed how in English, usually it's word order that conveys the function of a noun in a sentence, with a little bit of emphasis upon the case. So let's look here. Here we have basically two identical sentences, except we've flip-flopped the word boy and girl. We have girl here at the end of the sentence, and we've in the second sentence put it at the beginning. Whereas here we have the word boy at the beginning of the sentence, and in the second sentence we have the word boy at the end. These two sentences have very different meaning. In the first sentence we say, the boy held the girl's hand. In our minds, we're probably generating a picture of a boy reaching out with his hand and grasping the hand of the girl and holding on to it. That's one image. But when we go to the second sentence, we have a different image. In this scenario, the girl is the one reaching out, grasping the boy's hand, holding the boy's hand. And you can see in the first sentence, the boy is the actor. He is the one doing the verb. He's the one holding. In the second sentence, the girl is the actor. She's the one holding. She's the one grasping. But we can see that other than this suffix here, the apostrophe S, the words are, and the location of the apostrophe S in the words themselves are identical. So the way we communicate meaning in these sentences in English is by word order. Let's look at the next pair. It's the same thing, but you know what? Here we don't have any suffixes. We have the word boy here, and we have the exact same word boy here. We have the word girl here, and we have the exact same word girl here. In other words, these two sentences have exactly the same words. The only difference is location, but we can see that there's a subtle difference in the meaning. In this first sentence, the boy is the actor. He's the one playing. He's dribbling the ball, he's shooting the ball, and the girl is tagging along, but she's not the main actor in the story. She's kind of a secondary role. So that's how it works in that first sentence. In the second sentence, the roles are reversed. The girl is the main actor. She's the one taking the lead. She's the one playing the game. And of secondary importance in the sentence, at least, is the boy who's also present playing the game. So we're conveying a different meaning in sentence A versus sentence B. And the only difference is word order. Let's look at our second set. Again, very similar, except we do find that the suffixes here vary a little bit between these last two words. But we can see here that we have two boys and a girl. In this next one, we have two girls and a boy. Let's look at the differences here. In this first sentence, the boy is the actor. He's the one giving money. So we have the sentence, the boy gave the girl the boy's money. So before the sentence began, the boy had a certain amount of money in his possession. And over the course of the sentence, he's transferring that money to the girl. The girl now has the money. So by the end of the sentence, the girl is richer, the boy is poorer. In this sentence, though, it's reversed. Before the sentence began, the girl is the one who has money. She has it in her possession. By the end of the sentence, by the time we get to the paragraph, though, the girl is poorer, and that money is now in the boy's possession. So it has a very different meaning. But again, we're mainly establishing meaning based upon the word order. Does the word boy come first, or does the word girl come first? Even though there are some differences here with the apostrophe S. So there's some word endings, but mainly it's word order. And you can see here, as you dissect these, that I've put the nominative case words in green. So here we have all of our subjects. And you can see they line up neatly. In English, the nominative case, or the subject of the sentence, is almost always going to come first or early on the sentence. Then we can see the genitive case, and those are really easy to identify in English that is written in standard English, because we're going to see either an S apostrophe or apostrophe S. And then we have our dative and accusative, and again, you don't have to worry about distinguishing between those two for the purposes of this class. And we have those in blue, and you can see those are usually going to be after the verb. So we have our verb, held, played, gave, and gave. And so you can see on the other side of our bolded verb is where we're going to have the accusative and dative case incidences. Okay? So you can see word order is really, really key to understanding how nouns work in English sentences. But even though word order is really, really important, it's not the only thing that is important. If you've seen a Star Wars movie, you've probably heard Yoda talk in kind of a weird word order. And the interesting thing about that is that most of the time Yoda's sentences are grammatically correct. And most of the time, it takes us a second maybe to process what's being said, but most of the time we understand pretty readily what the point is that he's trying to make. And so those are still correct. You may have also read poetry where it seems like the word order is a little bit different than what we might typically have. Sometimes the word order is affected because the writer wants to have a certain beat to the poetry, or wants to have a certain rhyme scheme to his poetry, or he wants to emphasize certain words or put certain words next to each other, maybe for alliterative purposes or something along those lines. And you can't have any word order and make sense in English, but there is some flexibility. So let's look at these two pairs of sentences. And you see here's one pair, here's another pair, and so forth. And you'll be able to see that all these sentence pairs mean the same things, even though the word order is different. And you can see in purple I've put the phrase that we're moving. The first sentence is the standard way, the way that we expect the words to be in English. The boy held the girl's hand. In the second sentence, still grammatically correct, a little bit odd sounding, we have the girl's hand he held, or the girl's hand the boy held would also work. Let's look at the next one. The girl held the boy's hand. Again, the boy's hand she held, or the boy's hand the girl held. Let's look at our next sentence. The boy played basketball with the girl. This time we're going to move the with the girl to the beginning. With the girl, the boy played basketball. Grammatically correct. Let's go down to this sentence. The boy gave the girl the boy's money. This one isn't as awkward sounding as frankly the others, because this is an alternative word order in English. The boy gave the boy's money to the girl. So all these are correct sentences. Some sound better than others. The point I'm trying to make here is not that there's a pattern you have to memorize. If you speak English fluently, and of course you do if you're in this class, you already know how to do this. You may not have ever sat down and consciously thought about word order in this way, but you know how to do it because you know English. The thing I'm trying to point out is to rise at a conscious level in your head, the fact that word order varies and that you, the writer, can control that. And there may be reasons at times that you want to choose a little bit different word order. There may be certain goals that you want to accomplish with that. Okay, so we've talked about pronoun cases in English, and we've talked about noun cases in English, but we haven't talked about pronoun cases. This is a really, really important part of English, and it's one that perhaps we don't consciously think about that much, but it's an important part of how we speak. And for those of us who are native English speakers, we don't even have to think about this. This is stuff that the average 2 or 3 or 4-year-old knows if he or she grew up in an English-speaking family. For those of us that are learning English or have learned English as a second language, you may have formally been taught this, but still, by the time you become fluent, it has become most likely second nature to you. So let's go through case with pronouns in English, because this is where most of our most of our case usage is in English. Let's go back and just look at the German cases. Again, we weren't looking at pronouns. We were looking, in the case of German, to the actual nouns. And let's look at German. We can see that for the most part, the noun doesn't change, except in the genitive case, but the noun marker changes. You see there's an R here, there's an N here, there's an S here, there's an M here. Here we have die, der, das, des, dem. When we look at Old English, we can see that the suffix to the nouns often changes. Well, let's look how it works when we're looking at pronouns. When we are in first person singular, we say I. I am going to the store. I am the actor in that sentence. I'm the one moving towards the store. When we are using the objective case, the direct object or the object of the preposition, we say me. You bought me a present. Me. It would be weird, it would be wrong if someone were to say, you bought I a present. That doesn't sound good to us at all. My is the usual way we say possessive. I drove my car to the bank. It would be weird to say, I drove I car to the bank. I drove me car to the bank. That doesn't sound right. We'll talk about reflexives, by the way, at a later presentation. The first person plural, the nominative case here is we. You can say another way, you and I. That's a way to communicate that idea. And you can see the cases here change. We, us, our. Let's go to the second person. Second person singular and plural, we have the same form, you and you. Once upon a time in English, these were different forms, but now we only have one form. And that leads to some confusions, to be honest. This isn't a presentation about pronouns necessarily in depth here, but let me pause and just give my little bit of a spiel here about this. If I am talking, let's say there's one student in the class that I want to address in front of the class, I might say, Bob, you need to be sure to come to class on time. In that context, everyone knows who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Bob because I started by using a noun of direct address. I refer to him and then I say you. But if I hadn't led with that, Bob, you need to come to class on time, and I just said, you need to come to class on time, the students in the classroom wouldn't know whether I'm referring to all the students or just one student. Maybe I'm looking directly at Bob when I'm saying this and I'm wagging my finger at him just because he walked in late. Well, in the context, you probably could figure out that I was talking to specifically Bob. But if, on the other hand, I'm looking at the class, looking broadly, making eye contact with lots of students, and say, you need to be sure that you're in class on time, then you're probably going to think, I'm talking to the whole class. So you have to look for context clues in that situation. This ambiguity causes sometimes problems, and English has some informal ways of solving this, because again, the formal way, the formal solution that English once had has been lost. We no longer say thee and thou, right? So in Northern American states, it's common to say you guys. So when we want to convey the idea of more than one you, we'll say, you guys need to come to class on time. But if I'm just talking to Bob, I'd probably in a northern state say, Bob, you need to come to class on time. Different meaning. In southern states, we're more likely to say y'all. And of course, y'all is a contraction. It is you and all. And of course, the word all implies plural. So if I'm referring just to Bob, I might say, you need to come to class on time. But if I'm in the South and I'm referring to a whole room of people, I'm going to say, y'all need to come to class on time. The use of you guys and y'all is informal. It is perfectly appropriate to use those in spoken English. I encourage you to use those in spoken English because it resolves an ambiguity, but they do not belong in written English, and they especially don't belong in formal legal writing. So use it in spoken English all the time, but don't use it in formal writing. I've included them here. I've actually dropped them down. This y'all right here, just lift it up here, should be up here, and this should be up here. That's where it goes. And we would also have y'all right here too. Okay, so now let's go to the third person singular. We have he, him, his. Third person singular female is she, her, her. Third person neuter is it, and its. Third person plural is they, them, and their. You can see that in most cases, they change. We'll see that in the nominative and objective case, you doesn't change. We'll see that in the objective and possessive case, her doesn't change. We'll see in the nominative and objective case, it doesn't change. But most cases, most of the time, they change. And so that's one of the reasons in English we refer to it as a case-based language, because in fact, with the use of pronouns, it is highly case-driven. But guess what? You never had to learn any of this if you are a native English speaker. You learned it from the cradle. Let's look at some examples. We have the boy held the girl's hand, but let's say we wanted to use pronouns. Well, the boy is the subject, right? We're using green for subject. And so we want to replace the subject masculine singular word noun. And so we're going to look it up here. We're going to look at third person, masculine subject, he. So we're going to place the boy with he. The boy held the girl's hand. Well, we can see with the apostrophe s it's in the genitive case. So we have third person, feminine, singular, genitive case. Let's go back and look. Third person, singular, female, genitive case, possessive case should be her, right? So here we have it. The boy held the girl's hand. He held her hand. In every case we go through these. But guess what? You and I don't need to refer to that cheat sheet because we know all this stuff. The boy played basketball with the girl. He played it with her. The girl gave the boy the girl's money. She gave him her money. This stuff is pretty easy for us, pretty intuitive for us to do. We are using case automatically without reflection. None of us would say, she gave she money. That doesn't sound like English. If we were to hear somebody say that, maybe someone who's an English learner, it would take us a couple seconds to figure out what they meant to say. That's how foreign it would sound to us. So we know we actually do know what case this is, and what case this is, and what case this is. We know what all the cases are because we know automatically which pronoun to use. And because of that, we can leverage our pronoun knowledge to make sure that we're picking the correct case. I'm going to end the presentation here, and we will resume more discussion about how case and pronouns and apostrophes work in another lecture. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.